Hello. Hello. Lee, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Lee. I know Angie for many, many years, 13 years or so now. And I used to be a ex-resident at Somewhere House. Ended up working there. Started doing a bit of voluntary, doing stuff for paid work. And then sadly moved away. And, this is the truth, I still miss that job today. It was my best job. I was saying to Vicky, it was my best job that I ever had. The experience that I got and the learning that I got through that developed me into the work that I sort of do today. But I do really miss working there.
It's that camaraderie though, isn't it? And that kind of having people around you that you know and are familiar, I think often is the case.
I think a lot of it was I was really comfortable there. Obviously when I first went into Somewhere House, it was a real struggle. It was a battle because I didn't know who I was at all. I was totally lost and I had no direction in life. I'm just going to be honest, I seen you as a kind of mother figure, and you support me through some hard times and you love me when I couldn't love myself. And then I suppose having that opportunity to actually work there and be part of your family, and even prior to that coming down and doing the horses and stuff like that, I was living in Weston-super-Mare. Obviously I went through your treatment centre to start with in 2009. I went in there in the December and I did the 6.5 months in there, and then I went into Bridgewater and I moved into one of the houses there. And I can remember sitting in groups and saying, constantly, my problem is Class A drugs. I can have a drink and I can still smoke weed. At that time, I had 10 clients in there and 2 counsellors telling me I couldn't. But at that time, I knew best. I went on home leave one time, and my dad, funny enough, didn't really understand. He thought my problem was drugs, and he offered me a can of Foster's, and I drunk it, and I thought I could hide it. And then I sort of come back to the house, and the guilt and the shame and the remorse what I sort of done, and I felt like I let everybody down and I let myself down. And if you remember, I just left, and I left a box of roses saying sorry. And then obviously I went back to using, and I ended up in a bed sit in Birmingham, in a desperate place again. I was on the verge of death, and they fast-tracked me to go back into treatment, and I ended up back in Broadway Lodge in September 2012, and I knew this time, it was sort of, I had nothing left. I had nothing left to give. It was either get clean, do this, or die, and I think through the experience I had through Somewhere House, I knew that it was possible. And since then, I've just sort of moved forward with my life.
So what are you doing now?
So I work in mental health now. So since when I left, well, if you remember, when I was working at Somewhere House, I also got a second job just towards the end, working with people with learning disabilities and stuff. And
brave job, that is.
Yeah, and then I did that for two years, and then I moved, obviously, to Bognor. I tried to go back down the recovery route. I was offered a job. And then when they a place called the Lighthouse Treatment Centre in Worthing, I don't know if you've heard of it. And then when I added things up and that, and I wanted like 40 for 45 hours a week, and then there was free sleepings in that, and the wage was like basic minimum wage, and I applied for 2 jobs at the same time. And then the job that I work now, I've been there 4 years now, 3.5 years. That money was better, so I decided to sort of take that job, and I basically support people that can't support themselves through their day. The money's not great, if I'm totally honest, but I've got enough to survive. I go on holidays, we're getting married in Vegas next year. All that
Please
sort
don't
of
invite me. I'm not coming to Vegas. Sorry, I can't go off the subject. I want to stay on both subjects there. So because people don't understand about mental health, do they? Because I know you've had your own struggles with mental health, and so have I. I know you have as well. We all have struggles with it. Primarily are people unwell with?
We've got people with schizophrenia, bipolar, which is managed by medication. We've also got people in there with autism. There's one in there that's got cerebral palsy.
Oh, wow.
It's a mixture.
I was going to say, because that's more physical than it is mental.
The house is very settled. There's been some staff there that have been there 15, 17 years.
Oh, wow.
The guys have been, I think the shortest time someone's been a resident there is about 13 years. They've done a lot of work. So I'm the PBS worker there. So believe it or not, I'm the positive behaviour support there.
Yeah.
So basically, my struggles with dyslexia and stuff like that through Somewhere House and working there. I write all the care plans, and I basically do all the PBS plans and all the risk assessments for the behaviours and stop them happening or occurring really before they start. So I do all that sort of stuff.
But that's an intuitive thing, isn't it? To be able to see that in somebody. You can see where they're going, and that's something that you have. It's a skill that you have.
Yeah, and I suppose I just developed that through my own behaviours, you know, when I was young and stuff. Obviously, I went to special schools. I never really listened. I got zero education, really, left school with no exams, really, no GCSEs. At that time, I wasn't really addicted to heroin, but I dabbled in it, you know, but I smoked a lot of weed through school. And yeah, and I sort of sid my behaviours, and I suppose I can sort of recognise that in other people now. You know, but I'd never change my line of work. And I do this not because of the money, you know, I do this because for so many years I took from society, you know, and I always remember what you used to say, you know, always give back, you know, always give back. And that's why I do it, really.
And so is that, I mean, it's remarkable really when you kind of consider that kind of thinking that you have now and that change from I've taken and now it's my time to give back. Does it feel like, because I mean, let's face it, you're never going to get rich on your job. You know, you don't get rich in our jobs really, do you? Unless you're lucky in some other aspects. But primarily, it's like, how are you going to manage a family? Are you going to have kids? I don't know what the plan is.
I'm okay without children.
Really personal questions.
If I'm honest, the one thing that I still struggle with, you know, I am still quite selfish, you know. Yeah, I've changed a lot, you know, but I like to go to football. I like to go to the gym. I like my sleep. I like my own independence, you know. Took on a stepson who's 17 now, you know, which I sort of do my best for. So I don't feel like I really need to have children. Put the lottery on every week, hoping that I'm going to win that to turn around, you know.
Wouldn't that be nice?
And make the millions. But I've got enough, you know. I suppose where I walked into some warehouse, you know, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. When I was a child, I always had everything that I wanted materialistically. The one thing that I really wanted and needed was someone to give me a hug and sort of tell me, do you know what, Lee, that's going to be all right. And I sort of think I found that in you a little bit and the other staff at some warehouse. So when I come into some warehouse, you know, I had nothing. Nothing at all. You know, I think I had a bag of clothes, you know, a few bits that my mum had got me to come into the treatment centre, and that was sort of it. So what I've got today, I've got enough deposit saved to buy a house.
Wow.
You know, I've got a new car. You know, we do rent a house at the moment. I go on holiday a couple of times a year, you know. I'm a fanatic Tottenham fan, as you always know. You know, I travel home and away. You know, I've missed one game this season. I've spent about $4.5 grand.
How did they get on last night? Because I know you text.
1-1. 1 last night. Obviously, that was just the first leg, so there's another leg, and I'm going out to Germany on Tuesday to watch them. I'll go all over the country and all over Europe following it. You know, it's my passion. I suppose, you know, you put the drugs down and then your disease manifests in other areas of your life. Lots of different things, you know, from when I first got into recovery, you know, it was playing computer, you know, Xbox.
You were obsessed with that though, weren't you?
Obsessed, you know, phones, you know, totally obsessed with my phones. A number of times that you told me off for being on my phone was sort of unreal. You know, then just silly things like wanting a faster motorbike, wanting to drive my car faster, you know. Relationships, to women, to sex, to, you know, all that sort of stuff. And I sort of exhausted all them avenues, I suppose, and sort of football and the gym is sort of where I've sort of found that that's quite healthy, you know, in the context, you know, I'll go to the gym. I'll probably go on average 3 times a week. When I first started going, I'd go 7. So I sort of found a balance with that, you know, and I go to football because I don't go to the pub. I don't drink, you know, I don't do anything, you know. I sort of said to Vicky, you know, when we first met, you know, like, obviously my recovery needs to come first. You know, if I don't attend meetings, you know, I've not got myself, so you definitely won't have me. And then obviously I said, no, the gym's really important, you know, I use the gym more for my mental health. And then obviously there's Tottenham Hotspur, and if you sort of, I know I shouldn't have really said it, but if you can accept them 3 things, then we can sort of be together, because I need them things in my life, because that's what's kept me safe. In October, I'll be 13 years clean.
I have a husband, as you know, who is obsessed with sport. So the worst thing I ever did was put the BBC app on his phone, because you can guarantee he is sat there like this. What are you looking at? Oh, sport. And it's like, so I understand, he doesn't go to matches and things like that, but he used to play rugby. I think sports are brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. I mean, I'm like that with my horses. I mean, the horses are my obsession, if you see what I'm saying. They're my distraction from everything else in the world. But yeah, why not? As long as you're not hurting anybody.
It's just my enjoyment, Sometimes I can be standing there. It's crazy, if I'm honest. Sometimes I can stand in there in a stadium of 60,000 people, and I just, for 1 second, I just think, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Because I feel so lonely in a stadium full of 60,000 people. Then other times I can sort of go into that stadium and think, wow, and really sort of connect, and it just shows me that, there's a lot still to work on.
But that lonely bit, sorry, can I just pick up on that? I think so many people feel like that, but aren't brave enough to say it.
I think a lot of it goes back to my childhood. Obviously I was a single child. My parents worked a lot. My mum worked basically 2 jobs. She worked 9 till 1 and then went to a second job from 2 till 9. I've said this to you many times before in life stories and in treatment. My dad never wanted children, and he told me that from a very young age, at the age of about 4. Now, please don't think I'm trying to say that I was neglected or anything like that, because I wasn't. And my dad used to come back from work and sort of do his own thing. And as I says, like, when it comes to the reading and writing, my parents never really sat down and did any homework or reading with me, and I think that contributed to sort of where I was when I got clean, and obviously through somewhere else and that, going back to college and re-educating myself. And, it's sort of, I can remember, the loneliness. I used to sit, my dad used to sit in the conservatory on a Friday night and do his horses and stuff and his football, and he was a working man and he used to have a drink and stuff. And I can remember being outside the conservatory doing kick-ups, because I just wanted him to come outside and say, wow, that was amazing. And it never sort of happened. Just like I said earlier on, I just wanted that hug to tell me sort of everything was going to be all right. And that never really happened either, until I sort of went into somewhere else, really. And I sort of got that love, and I suppose that channeled into my life, that sort of that self-care and that self-respect and that dignity that I found. I really want to say it's been all roses since I left, but there's been many ups and downs. Sometimes I like myself, sometimes I don't, sometimes I struggle, sometimes I don't. But the one thing that I've not wanted to do since I've been about 2.5 years clean is use. I've not wanted to use. And I know somewhere else is a self-empowered treatment centre. We used to have people come in from NA and sort of do meetings and stuff like that. But obviously when I went to Broadway Lodge, I went through the 12 steps, and I committed to the fellowship. I can remember living in Bristol, and I was doing 5 meetings a week. I think it was about 111 days clean. I took on a service post of taking the meeting in the Salvation Army with like 70 people in the meeting. I really put myself out there because I was just terrified of using. I was really scared that I was going to use again, and I knew if I used again I'd die. I had no more recoveries left in me. I went into a Christian rehab when I was 18. I left straight away. I went into Broadway Lodge. I stopped there one night and I woke up, and it had been the first time, I think, in about 8 years, maybe 7 years, that I'd woke up without any drugs inside me or any drugs available. And I just felt broken and scared and terrified and just empty. And I sort of left. And I went straight to the big issue cellar in Weston and scored. And obviously I went into Broadway Lodge again in 2009, then obviously I did a detox there, and that's when I come to Somewhere House. Obviously left Somewhere House thinking I knew better, and had a drink, and then went back to Broadway Lodge. It's been a bit of a journey. Then went back to Broadway Lodge, ended up in quite a toxic relationship in Weston-super-Mare, really struggled, and that's when I contacted you. I knew you'd sort of be there to sort of help me. And, well, not just you, everyone who was at Somewhere House at the time, all of the staff and Dave and that. And that's when you give me this gift where I could come here and sort of do the horses, and it just gave me that break away from Western, because I just didn't like living there at all. And I can remember I had a DT125, and I used to, on a Tuesday and a Thursday, if I remember right, I used to drive from Western on that bike and down these country lanes, and I just used to feel at peace. There was no distraction. I had my helmet on. If my phone rung, I couldn't answer it. I couldn't look on my phone. And I think in that moment, something changed. Something changed, and I really thought, what, I can sort of do this. I'm sort of worth it. And then you had Irish, and I used to go over there. And
Irish, the owner killer, he was awful.
And do his hay bags, and that sort of stuff, and clean out the stables. And he used to nip me and bite me, and he used to remind me of myself. And I used to think, yeah, like I really like this horse. When I come down, I said to Vicky, it looks like they've still got Irish because I see the grey horse out there, and obviously he's gone. He was a bit naughty,
he went very quickly after you left. I think actually I got rid of him.
So it's been a journey, but I'm just going to be honest. I don't want to blow smoke up your arse, but I am really grateful for the help. Because I think that time when I was in Western Supermare, I'd failed so many times previously, and I'd never asked for help the previous times, and I can always remember you saying, if you ever struggle, ask for help. And you was the one person that I sort of knew that would sort of help me. And I made that call, and straight away he says, why don't you come? I think it was a cup of tea to start with. I come here and we had a cup of tea, and we went over and spent a bit of time with the horses. It was 10 years ago now, so my memory's... And then... obviously, then that's where the voluntary work started with the horses, which led on to voluntary work in Somewhere House, which had led on to paid work in Somewhere House. Yeah, it's mad, like the journey that I've sort of been on.
But isn't that, something, it's like asking for help, because, our relationship isn't the same, but it was based on helping, really, wasn't it?
For sure, yeah,
it's
absolutely.
that bit about giving back to each other, and I think that's that bit is about having the ability to be able to say, I'm struggling and I need some help, and asking for help. And I think that takes a lot of courage to do that for anybody, whether you're in recovery or you're a businessman or you're whatever your circumstances are, or family trauma or whatever, is being able to say, I need help. I know for myself, asking for help, I have no qualms about asking for help. But I do sometimes leave it a bit long. So, and I think I'm quite a private person, even though people think they know a lot about me. They don't really know that much about me. But I'm private in the sense of what's emotionally going on for me. And I think sometimes I don't think that's healthy for some people. But I have therapy. Do you know what I'm saying? And I would never not have therapy.
I think a lot of it for me taps into trust, I suppose like when I was going through my childhood and using, and that trust was a massive issue, everyone that I sort of put trust in, that trust was broken. And whether it was associates that I was using, we've just used each other. If it was certain family members, certain friends, either when I was at school, certain teachers, sexual abuse at the age of 16 through my own consequences of sort of using, and I suppose I built that trust within Somewhere House. I was able to speak to certain counsellors. I was able to speak to certain members of staff, yourself, Dave, Richard at the time. And if that trust's not there, I can't ask for help. I have to be able to trust, someone, because it's sort of me opening myself up and
but
being vulnerable.
Is that the same for everybody? Would that be the same for you?
I think it is. Yeah, absolutely.
What comes first, the trust or the asking? It's really hard because
I think there's a balance there, because sometimes by asking for the help and getting the help or the support or the guidance that you need, that creates the trust. Yeah, I think sometimes you're not going to go and walk down the street and go, oh, you over there, can you help me with this? But there's a level of respect, I think. I think it's a respect. You respect that person, so therefore you then ask them for some help, and that's one that leads to trust. I think that's a good way of looking at it.
I suppose I look at it differently. I look at, like, say, Vicky's not in recovery. I'm sort of in recovery. You wouldn't see a normal person go up to somebody in a bus stop in the street and say, do you know what, mate, I feel really anxious today. That sort of wouldn't happen. But people in recovery, they seem to be able to do that with each other, because you've got that mutual understanding, we understand how we think, how we feel.
I disagree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hear you. I agree with what you're saying in some aspects, but I also feel that people who are not in recovery have the capacity to do that and also have the capacity to listen. I just think sometimes as a community and as a society, we're not encouraged to do that. So if I'm stood in a bus stop and I feel anxious about something, I'd say something to anybody. I don't care who they are, because I know that I need to say that to get it out of the way. You'd ring me, wouldn't you? And I would ring you if there was something that was bothering me. We would, and he's not in recovery. And I think sometimes it's just, are we taught to do that?
See, I wouldn't be able to do that. Some random stranger, I wouldn't just be able to say, do you know what, I feel anxious, because I wouldn't be able to trust that person, you know, and obviously that goes back to my childhood. We
Yeah,
have
yeah,
got
yeah.
a lot of trust issues. I need to trust somebody. I need to know somebody. They need to know me for me to be able to open up and be honest with them. You know, I've got a lot of people in my...
Why? Because I know you're saying because of your childhood, but to me, it's that bit where, okay, yeah, I had shit childhood. You had shit. I don't know you didn't saying you didn't have a shit childhood, but you had a difficult childhood at times. But it's like to me, if I need to say that I'm anxious, or I need to say I'm struggling here, I just need a friend or something. I'm going to do it no matter what my circumstances are, because personally, I know that if I don't, the consequences of that could be greater. So I don't care in that sense. I will say morning, or I'll say, oh, actually, no, it's not a good morning for me this morning. I feel a bit rubbish. And I don't need to trust that person, because actually I might not ever see that person again. So it doesn't matter. And they're only I'm only gonna give them what I want to give them. I'm not going to give them my name, address, telephone number, email address, etc., so they can chase me around the country.
I suppose I don't need to tap into people that I don't know at a bus stop. Maybe, you know, over the years that I've been around, you know, I've gone to conventions all over the world. You know, I still go to NA now. You know, I'm still a member of Narcotics Anonymous. I've lived in quite a lot of places in the last 13 years, so I've got a lot of connections. So if I am struggling, I'm just able to pick the phone up, you know, and speak to somebody.
But that's your network, isn't it?
That I trust.
What happens when your network's not there?
But unfortunately, my network has always been there.
And it's all over the world.
But then I do know someone recently who was struggling. You know, he found 5 people. You know, nobody picked up and he used. So I get where you're sort of coming from. Right, I just lucky enough to have that network, and that's through a lot of hard work and a lot of meeting people and getting over a lot of anxiety and a lot of trust issues and sort of building that. You know, I knew that I needed that. If I look back where I had in somewhere else, I had a network. I was in a bubble, sort of a cocoon, a little bit, you know, and then obviously when I sort of left the treatment centre, you know, I was this butterfly that sort of flew away and sort of grew the wings and sort of independently sort of took responsibility for myself. And I suppose I've just continued that through my recovery, you know, and basically in that process put myself out there and learnt what I learnt in somewhere house with a lot of other people. If I'm honest, over the last 2 years, I've not really needed to connect to that network. Now, I can always remember you saying, you know, the pink fluffy cloud, it won't be there forever. Something along them lines, you know, and that was true. You know, after about 4 years, I struggled a little bit. You know, I didn't want to use, but, you know, emotionally and, you know, a very toxic relationship. You know, I managed to get out of that clean. I think I messaged you at one point, maybe had a chat with you, connected with NA, went to meetings, NA, 7 days a week for about 90 days. And I think I missed 2 meetings in that 90 days because I didn't want to use. And I was scared. Even though I didn't want to use, I knew my behaviours wasn't right and it was leading up to that. Yeah, and then I've just always stayed connected. I suppose I always play the tape back and I remember what it was like. You know, and I always play the tape forwards, you know, and think what could happen.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a really good insight that I've sort of learned.
Oh, yeah, I always think ahead in that sense.
But the last 2 years, my life has been quite settled. You know, I've got a beautiful partner. We've been together
4 years.
Been together 4 years. We've had 2 tiffs, not arguments, little tiffs. You know, we get on Lego house on fire. You know,
are you still a control freak? I'm not. I didn't mean that unkindly.
Yeah.
I know that control was part of what you had to do to keep yourself.
I tried to control things.
So I shouldn't be asking you this question.
Going back to the control, I think I tried to control things around me. I didn't really control other people. I don't feel. Maybe you see it differently. I just felt like I tried to control outcomes and possibilities and stuff like that. And that was all about anxiety and again trust and trying to keep myself safe and secure and in a comfortable position, really, in where I wouldn't put myself in any danger. Because, you know, I suppose I never had any control, and then sort of getting clean, I had this little bit of control, and that elevated to a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I don't need to control anything today. You know, that's what I've sort of learned. You know, what will be, will be. And if I go back to my childhood again, talking about control, I can always remember always fearing the unknown, like that something was going to happen, not knowing what was going to happen, but something was. You know, I'd be one of these kids that would before I went to bed, make sure all the doors was locked and all the windows was locked in the house and the shed was locked and the gate was locked and all that sort of stuff, because I always thought something was going to happen. And I think a lot of it started there, if I'm honest. I was 6, 7, doing the job that my parents should have been doing, because I didn't feel, even though they probably did it, I would still do it and double check, because I always felt like I needed to control something.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Quite weird.
Do you control? Are you a controller at all?
I don't think I am, no. Not particularly.
I think
there's elements that perhaps, but that's more to do with work rather than anything else.
I think I can be if I need to be. I don't really want the responsibility. I come home from work and Dave would go, "What?" And I go, "Please decide. I do not want to make another decision today. I don't want to be in control of this relationship," because it's quite hard when you are in charge. Is that the right word?
I definitely get that. I definitely get that. As in, I can make lots of decisions at work. I'm home. I can't. Do I want this colour door or do I want that colour door?
Oh, I'll decide that for you if you like.
I'm having this with kitchens. I can't decide on.
Don't have a dark kitchen like I've just got.
Really?
Yeah, don't.
Why?
Because, well, I'm assuming it's because it's dusty still and all the dust hasn't settled, but every little mark you can see it.
Okay, that's interesting.
And every bit of dust comes up, and like I'm going around thinking, "Oh my, it looks like I'm dirty." I'm not.
Trying to decide on kitchen colours, whereas I've already decided on 3 other kitchens in properties that I'm renovating.
Yeah.
I've already decided what they look like and what the colours are. The kitchen design has not even been out yet. But my kitchen at home that I'm doing, I've been trying to decide for about 3 weeks now. I've been going backwards and forwards to the showroom.
What range of colours are we looking at?
It's blue or green. They're the colours. It's blue or green.
See, the thing is, if you have green, you then could be copying me.
I don't think so, because I think I told you I was thinking of a green kitchen well before you decided you were having a green kitchen. So I'm not sure about
We could argue that one.
Yes.
But I think completely understand your concept of having to have a level of control to be able to manage the difficult circumstances. I never felt that I had control as a child, full stop, in any way, shape or form, ever. Did you?
No, I don't think so. No, not in that sense.
I had to do all the jobs. So was that a level of control? I'm wondering if I'm sat here thinking, oh my gosh, I've replicated my childhood by being in charge of work, like literally doing everything. Housework to cooking to cleaning, literally everything. And I probably do similarly here. I mean, Dave does a lot at home, but yeah.
I suppose in your like, obviously you as the manager still are the boss of somewhere else. You've got to have some kind of level of control.
Yeah, no, that's right.
You sort of have, and I suppose when you finish work at 5 o'clock and you're driving home and then you come home, can you sort of automatically switch off and sort of go into that? I'm managing now. I'm not the boss of somewhere else.
We were talking about this with our previous podcast. I'm no different at home than I am at work. This is me, who I am, and I just do. If something needs to be done, I'll do it. I don't expect you to do it. If you see what I'm saying, I will just get on and do it. And it's not that I want to be in control of it because you can't do it as well as I can, because I know you can. I have no qualms about sharing the load. I think it's just a habit. So, like this morning, I planted some hedging and I thought, well, that looks a bit dry. It needs watering. I'll just get up and do it. I wouldn't say, oh, Dave, can you water that? I just wouldn't dream of doing that. I think that perhaps actually coming back to asking for help, I'd rather, if I'm physically able to do it for myself, I will do it. I wouldn't ask somebody else to do it. So I think that's the difference. I'll just get on and do it because I've always just got on and done it.
Well, I can be quite lazy and I can ask somebody else to do it. I don't want to do it. Honestly, I don't. I really don't. I don't. My duty is to the garden, to mow the lawn and keep the garden up to date. And it got towards the end of the summer last year and I was like, obviously my stepson, I was like, yeah, he's a tenner, can you come out the lawn?
You hated it,
And then me and Vicky, obviously sitting over there, we always have this joke, and she come home from work if I've had a day off that day, because I work long shifts, so sometimes I only work 4 days a week, and so I have 3 days off, but normally 1 day in the week, and she'll come home and she'll say, what have you done today? And I'll say, I've painted the kitchen, I've cut the grass, and nothing's been done. all
like a saying, I like that.
We have a little joke.
I think sometimes, though, it's really important just to sit. I mean, I do sit because I have to sometimes because of my health. I think before, I don't think I ever sat down. I don't think I ever sat down at all. I would be on the go. And now, the stupid thing we do at the end of every day, I don't know if you do this, we go on our watches or phones. How many steps have you done today? And I go like, and Dave always beats me. Well, most of the time. So like today, I've done 70 steps. I've been sat on my butt for the last 2.5 hours. But he will come in and go, yesterday was 35,000 steps. How does a normal person do that? They don't, do they? It's crazy. That's why he's so skinny.
Vicky does 10,000. So I bought her a pad, like a walking pad for Christmas. 6 days a week. She does 10,000 steps a day. She's done that.
What, on the pad?
Obviously, some with work, because she does care in the community, so she goes around people's houses and stuff. And then obviously what she's got left, she'll do on the walking pad on an evening. I was rubbing it on the way here, because obviously I've been to football a lot this week, and I've done a lot of walking. And my average this week's 12,000 steps, and I was saying to Vicky, I've done 12,000 steps on average this week.
You don't want to compare yourself to Dave.
No.
Trust me, you do not want. Where they sat here after the garden, and his back was forward.
He never used to stop when I was around, though, did he? He used to be in some warehouse at 7:30, sometimes 7 o'clock in the morning, and it didn't finish till 6 o'clock. That's the Dave that I know, and that's the Dave that I remember.
Well, funnily enough, we were in the car the other day, and I had to leave early to go and I had to be in work early, so I left early to go to the office, which is unusual. I don't go to the office early. And I went, oh my gosh, I used to listen to this because I used to go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then another night we were out and the Archers came on, and I said to Dave, I used to listen to this on the way home from work, and it's 7 o'clock at night, and this is like, I would do like that amount, and that was in the office. That wasn't like anything else. I was in the office from 6 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock at night. Why on earth did I do that? It's like, why did I do that? I know I probably had to, but at the time you think, I didn't even think about it. Didn't even think twice about it.
I can remember that one time I was, obviously I'd worked the night shift at some warehouse, and I was doing the sleeping. And I think it was around about that time, around 6 o'clock in the morning, I could hear noise, and I thought, it's one of the clients in the office. And I've popped my head out the door, and it was Andrew. And that must have been about, I can always remember that. That must have been about 6:10 in the morning, something.
So we've spoken quite a lot about sort of past, done over the last, I think you said, was it 11 years or 12 years?
I'll be 13 years clean in October.
13 years, wow, which is amazing. What are your future plans? Obviously, you touched on that you're getting married. What's your kind of...
You can't remember, can you?
No, in a way, but we can't book the flight. The problem is you only can book a year in advance to go to America.
Of course. So
we need to wait. So Vicky's done a lot of what she wants and what she's I'm a man. I've just said, you do what you want to do. I'll pay. I mean, and we'll go away and we'll sort of get married. But we're going to keep it very small.
Yeah.
Like you said at the start, you're quite a private person. I think I've became that person as well. So it'd be my mum, fella, Vicky's mum, the boy, me and Vicky, and my best friend, and that's all that we're going to sort of go out there, and we're planning to get married in June, and then we want to buy a house. We've both got a reasonable amount of money saved, which
Good.
would go down for a deposit.
And where are you going to do that? In Bognor? Sounds awful, sorry.
I'm not going to do it in Bognor. I'm sort of moving away, because I want to move closer to London.
Really? Why? Because of Tottenham.
Yeah.
My word, that poor woman that you're living with.
Then the other side is, my mum and dad are getting old. My mum's 65 now. My dad's 60.
They separated, didn't they?
Yeah. My dad's 67.
You need to be quiet right now, okay? Because I'm old there.
They're going to need a bit of support.
Yeah.
Realistically, we can't afford to buy anywhere near London anyway. No. So maybe somewhere between
Swindon.
Possibly, but I thought Gloucester, that's that sort of way. Either maybe Farnborough, which is only I know it's only an hour and 15 minutes away from Bognor, but it's still closer to my parents. That's sort of the plan. Do you know what? I just don't want for anything, Andrew. I would just like for my future, to be happy, which I already am. I feel 99% of the time. and just a nice house and a decent job. I don't, just like you, I can always remember you saying, like when people used to come here, like the clients, they used to think, wow, look what you've got. You know what I mean? Look what you sort of built and stuff. And I can always remember you saying when you went into a treatment centre, you had a black bag. I can always remember that, and that's stuck with me firmly because that was sort of me. And I don't really want for anything. Now, as long as I've got a nice car, I've got my partner, I'm healthy, my family's healthy, I can go on holiday a couple of times a year. It would be nice not to worry about paying rent. That's my only concern in life right now. That might seem like really reserved to other people, but it's a sort of the truth. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with something called hemochromatosis. So basically, it's where my body doesn't break down iron, and it was attacking my liver. And I had to, and this was a struggle, obviously. I had to go and have blood taken out weekly for 6 months. I did it for every single week.
And how often do they do it now?
So I've got to go back in June, and that'll be 6 months since the last one.
Yeah, so they do it every 6 months now? Or do they test you? So
they test me and see where my ferritin's at. So it's my ferritin level, which is classed with the iron. Basically, what they do is every 3 months I go to the doctor. So I went probably about 3 weeks ago, and it was low. It was 25, and then I've got to go again in June, and they'll see where it's at. Normally, if it goes over 100, they want to sort of take blood out.
It's funny, one of my close friends' dad's got it.
Yeah. My mum got tested, she's got it. Hers is just over 200, so they won't do anything because they say realistically risk levels over 300. It has damaged my liver.
Yeah.
It's scarred. Well, I've got a scarred liver and a fatty liver. But then I don't know if that's through my past or through, obviously, the hemochromatosis. So I do feel quite tired and quite lethargic sometimes and stuff, but I'm on a good run at the moment. I do feel all right. I'm sort of going to the gym again, sort of fighting through it. But then when my levels do go really high, it's one of them, I'll go to work and I'll come back and I'll sit on the sofa and I won't be able to move. And that's the only real massive problem that I've sort of had in my life in the last 3-4 years. Like it says this.
So what are your levels when they're bad?
So I went to the doctors 9 times telling the doctor something is not right. So it was just before COVID. And in the end, I harassed the doctor. They said, you got high cholesterol. They give me tablets for that, statin, I think it was. Then all of a sudden, it's high B12 and they give me tablets for that. It got to the point where I says, listen, and I had to be forefront with them. And I says, listen, you need to test for everything because it's not these things, I'm virtually going to work, coming back, and I'm going to sleep. There's something seriously wrong. And they did the massive test, and I could see on the computer like £45, £65, £90, like adding all the blood tests, like the things that was testing. It added up to like 400 odd quid in the end, and they tested. That's where they said that I had hemochromatosis, and my levels, obviously your levels roughly are meant to be between 20 and 100. Mine was 1,714 at the time. So obviously then that's where I had to... I think it was about 7 months of blood taken out weekly in total, just under 7 months. And I went from because I was at that time, I was quite big, I went from 15 stone down to 12 stone within the space of 6 months, 7 months. But again, I've learned, to sort of manage it. And the way that I sort of get through it, and to some people it might seem a little bit wrong, but I think about that gratitude, and I think at least I've not got cancer, at least I can see, at least I've still got my legs, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I have got hemochromatosis, it's treatable, it's manageable. Now I'm still here, I'm hopefully still going to wake up tomorrow. What's the point in dwelling on it? Don't get me wrong, sometimes when I'm going through the process of having the blood taken out, it's not like that, I'm a victim, poor me sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? Darling, come and rub my head. Do you know what I mean? All that sort of stuff. But I'm learning to manage it better.
Do they just extract the blood the same way as they do if you're giving blood?
Yeah, if you're giving blood.
And do they give that blood to anybody, or can't they use it?
No, they throw it straight away because it's got too much iron. So it's
no good to anybody.
It just goes straight in the bin. It's a waste. It really is a waste of blood. But obviously, I asked the question in the hospital and asked the nurse, why can't you give it to somebody that's got low iron? Yeah. But they can't. Their policy is that they need to throw it away. They just put it straight in the bin. It's quite weird. Obviously, when you go and give blood, you normally give a pint of blood, don't you? And you can see this bag filling up, and then all of a sudden it goes in the bin, and there's people that need that blood.
Do they give you a biscuit after they've taken
it? No, they don't.
There's a big bit about giving blood.
Do you know what, though? going to the NHS, you know, they say at the moment, you know, it's under crisis, you know, there's obviously people can't get treatment and that. I can't knock you.
No.
Do you know, I've gone there, the longest I've ever waited to go into a blood taking out is 10 minutes. The nurses are amazing. You know, like if I go to the doctors and then they get my blood results, you know, within 2 days they're phoning up, you know, to tell me what my levels are and that sort of stuff. You know, they've been, you know, this is Portsmouth Hospital. You know, they've been absolutely amazing.
It's funny because I have my bloods done, supposed to have them done every 6 weeks, but I don't go every 6 weeks, every 3 months if I need to. Well, no, I do go. But they're brilliant. They are really good. They do my bloods. And they will call me. I mean, you can look online now, can't you? You can look at your own results now. But they will call me within. Literally, they've got and they're on the phone to me saying, "You need to come in. You need to do this. You need to do that." They're really, really good. But your condition's incredibly rare, isn't it?
Well, they reckon, I don't know why, don't ask me why, but they say northern people, 5% of northern people have got hemochromatosis, they just don't know about it. And they reckon that a lot more people have got, the nurse that I was speaking to, Ali, she reckons that like at least 10% of the people possibly could have hemochromatosis. It's just not tested for. You know, like if people are feeling tired, lethargic, they normally think it's something else and not hemochromatosis. It's not very well known. At the moment at Portsmouth Hospital, there's a waiting list of over 1,000 people ready, waiting to have blood taken out.
No.
Yeah, she told me.
Wow.
And that's just waiting. You know, it is becoming more.
Wonder why?
I don't know. Well, obviously it's to do with genes. If your parents have got the genes, obviously it comes down to you. And I suppose I don't really know. Maybe because the population's getting bigger, it's spreading more. I don't really know.
Well, actually, the population's reducing, isn't it?
Sure.
But she did say that it's becoming more. I just think personally that the doctors are testing for it more. Right. So it's becoming more. People are becoming more aware of it. Yeah.
I'm the other way. I haven't got enough iron.
Oh, I have no idea.
Vicky's the same. She's not got enough iron either. So.
You're nuts. Because that's also similar symptoms to what you get. Really, just complete wipes you out.
Yeah. Mine's worse.
Of course. I want to say something, but I know Mike will tell me off for saying it on the podcast. So having a future and seeing it with Vicky, obviously, and her son, and moving away and all of that, are you excited about it? Does it feel exciting or does it feel because you suffer from anxiety? You know, I'm not being funny, but it's obvious that you suffer from anxiety. I know that, and I know that because I know you really well. But when you're looking towards all of those massive changes. I mean, I moved. How far is it to my old house? It was horrendous. It was awful. I mean, for other reasons as well, obviously, but primarily moving house is one of the most stressful things. Getting married is pretty stressful.
Moving house and buying a house. Yeah, I'm scared. I'm terrified. You know, it's a massive, massive commitment. We've had the money now probably about 14 months to buy a house, and we've just not took that, you know, that sort of plunge. But the situation at the moment is we've got a 3-bed house. You know, the landlord's someone that I know. Obviously, he's a Tottenham fan. We pay £900 a month. Yeah. And I mean, we was looking at some mortgage rates. You know, you're talking £1,500 a month. Yeah. You know, to sort of get a mortgage. And I suppose that brings up a lot of fear. You know?
And you've got to pay for the maintenance.
Yeah, so can I do that and also manage the life that I want to live right now with obviously football, you know, all that sort of stuff? And I think the answer is no, you know, especially with the interest rates at the moment. So our plan is at the moment is to save a little bit more money, which we've been doing, and then possibly buy a house when the interest rates come down.
They ain't going to come down much below 4.5%. No, absolutely not. It's sitting where it's sitting now, and I don't think it's going to move.
5 is the new normal, for sure.
It's also the logistics around it, you know, in getting a house. Obviously, where we want to move out of area, we want to move to a different place. Can we use our job references that we've got now in the sense of what we earn to move to a new place, or should we get jobs before we move, or should we, you know, rent first in the new area, then buy? There's a lot of logistics to think about and a lot of, you know, working out what you're sort of.
You won't ever have a struggle to get a job in the industry, either of you, because they are screaming for people, because people don't want to work, you know, and they are screaming for people to do that kind of what you're kind of work.
I get that, but there's only ever two places that I've really felt comfortable at and wanted to work, and that's going back to, like I said earlier on, at somewhere house and the job that I'm in now. So leaving the job where I am now, even though I don't dislike the area, I don't like the area where I live. Right. It's just that there's a lot of change in there.
There is, but that's what I was saying. Yeah. It is a big change, and it's like when you're and it's a bit like me. I don't want to move away from where I live, and it keeps me stable, and I like it. You're going to move away somewhere different, and it was like actually something else came along when Grandad passed away. It was like that. It's your comfort zone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and I think we all need a comfort zone. It's about how do you do that.
And I think, like I said, at the moment, life is very comfortable, and I don't really want to disrupt that. No. Do you know, I really don't, and I kind of like to be comfortable and sit in that comfort zone. You know, and I know sometimes that's a bad thing. There's a lot of responsibility in the things that we've just talked about, you know, moving, getting a mortgage, getting new jobs, you know. But ultimately, I'm going to have to do it sooner or later. I'm just sort of putting it off now. And I'm probably using the excuse that we pay really low rent and we've got a beautiful house, you know, a 3-bed house with a garden and pay 900 quid, which realistically should be £1,400, if that sort of makes sense.
But I suppose the thing is, if you put the £500 away each month that you're paying, that you should be paying, so if you paid £1,400 and you still saved, then actually you'll know whether you'll be able to afford a house.
Well, the only reason, you know, that I've sort of got the money that I've got, Vicky had hers through inheritance, you know. For the last 12 years, I've said, you know, like sometimes I've only took home £1,600, you know, like previously, like 3, 4, 5 years ago, I've always saved £400 a month, every single month for over 10 years. And that's sort of why I've got the money to buy a mortgage, you know. When I'm going to swear a little bit here, but, you know, when I come into somewhere house, I didn't have a pot to piss in. So to now have that financial security, that, you know what, I've got a little bit of money in the bank, I'm sort of doing all right. And I suppose that there's a fear there of, you know, being financially insecure when I hand that money over, and it's like, you know, got nothing left in the bank. You're in the house, the boiler breaks, shit, what are you going to sort of do? Do you know, that sort of thing?
But we've both been through that as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I mean, you know, I remember when we had Somewhere House, and when we bought Somewhere House outright, but remortgaged our home.
I remember you saying.
And it was like, oh my word. And I remember coming home from work crying, saying we're going to lose our home. You know, because I believed in what we were doing, but it's about, did everybody else believe in what we were doing to send customers along? That was the thing, you know, and you've gone through that as well.
Absolutely. And sometimes actually pushing yourself to do it is the best thing, because if the boiler goes, well, you'll figure it out. It might be that you go and do some delivery driving of an evening, you know, to deliver takeaways to earn a little bit more to cover the boiler that month, or actually your higher power's going to make sure the boiler doesn't break. Who knows?
Well, it was funny. When Dave and I were first together, we were poor as church mice. We really were. And because all of our money went on to pay our mortgage. But we both had full-time jobs and a part-time job. Dave used to go up to the quarry at night, and he used to go and help somebody in a workshop do wood stuff, whatever they did in this place. They did wood stuff. And I used to clean people's houses on top of my job. Even when we set up Somewhere House, I was still doing private practice so that we could pay the wages for the staff. So I was working like 12 hours a day, and I'd see people privately so that we could pay their wages, and Dave would work so we could pay everybody's wages and pay all the bills. So I think you're right. It's just being brave and taking that step and trust.
Got to take the risk. So I keep seeing this, I read this article, and for some reason now my social media algorithm knows I've read this article. I keep seeing these quotes, which are, in order to make money, you've got to spend money. And I think the same is for when you invest in your own life. You've got to spend some money, i.e. go and buy a house, pay a deposit, in order to then sort of make that money back again.
Yeah, it's just that fear, isn't it? It is. No.
Fear resistance.
I suppose, like, you know, I've always avoided responsibility of some kind or another. And it's a massive thing. We will do it, you know, like we will do it. You know, we're going to obviously go on this, get married, go to Vegas, get married, and then we're going to make a decision after that, and obviously look at our resources then and our savings and stuff, and then sort of, you know, we're still saving, and then sort of go from there, really.
Yeah.
You know, it is the next step in my life, you know. I You know, I use the justification sometimes that, you know, I've got a couple of properties that my parents live in, you know, since they split up. My auntie's got like a beautiful property, you know. I can just wait till then, and sort of when I get a bit of inheritance, then I can buy a property then. But it's not the right way. You know, I've sort of, you know, since I've got clean, you know, I don't really want to go back to this, but, you know, I used to manipulate my mum for a lot of money. You know, she used to, I'm not even going to go there really, but yeah. And, you know, since I've got clean, I've not asked for a penny.
Good.
You know, I've done everything sort of by myself, and that's the way that I sort of want to continue doing it. And it's that fear, and it's that, God, shit, I'm going to have to take full responsibility for myself now, you know. And yeah.
You can always move back to Somerset.
Yeah, possibly.
You're on the Grand Tour.
But I was driving, like I said, I was driving down here, and I said to Vicky, I said, God, I forgot how beautiful it was around here. Do you know what I mean? It is sort of lovely. I did like Burnham.
Burnham's a nice place to live, and it's not a horrible place to live.
Well, when I moved to Taunton, though, I'd never thought I was going to move from there. I thought I was going to be in Taunton nice for the sort of the rest of my life. Obviously, I ended up moving for a woman, and then I moved to Portsmouth, and then obviously I've moved Vicky up to Bognor. It's just, I don't know. I'm a bit of a traveller by the sense of it.
No comment. How are we doing for time there, Mike?
We've gone a little bit over, so
oh dear. Chop chop.
shall we call it a day there?
Are you happy to?
Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for
appreciate
inviting me.
It's been a long journey for you, so thanks.
Thank you.
I do appreciate it.
Thank you.